Ladies, welcome to our monthly financial event. As Mark already mentioned, today we are going to learn about property investment, which is very interesting for me in particular because I know very little about it. So I'm excited to learn. I think we are going to focus on buy-to-let properties, but our guests are also going to kindly share with us how younger ladies who have not, who don't have a lot of initial investment to put, can still participate into property markets. The other topic that they're going to touch on is not only how to invest, but also financing options and how to use leverage, which is important. As you already know, our guests are from the Inside Group. We have Natalie Beswick, who started her career at the Yellow Pages and was there for 10 years holding various positions. Unfortunately, she was made redundant during her maternity leave, which was very shocking for me because most countries have laws against that. So after trying different things, last year she finally joined the Inside Group, which was much more understanding towards her mom's circumstances and offered her the balance she was looking for, which is great. And then we have Alison Edwards. Alison started her career as HR manager in a department store, but then she chose to run a guest house with her husband for 13 years. Eventually they decided to sell the guest house, and also last year Alison joined the Inside Group as a temp, but like Natalie, she apparently liked the balance that it offered, and she joined permanently and is now into her third position at the group as part of the sourcing team. Hopefully I didn't miss anything important. If I did, ladies, you can add. So having said that, I will ask you to, if you have questions, please type them in the chat. And I'm going to read them after the presentation, so we don't come at our guests from all sides, basically. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Alison.
Hi, thanks, Maria. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. Thank you very, very much for inviting us. At the Insight Group, we work solely on property. Well, we are a property investment company. We provide training and mentoring as well, but we're coming at this now from the side of the property investment. There's lots of different ways that you can invest in property. Student lets, HMOs, different sort of entry points into the market. But here we are dealing solely in family homes, 3 to 4 bedroom family homes that are in good places for people to live effectively. We have some rules that we follow, making sure that there's good schools nearby, transport links, job opportunities, plenty of places where really people want to live, where there's places they can build their lives and grow their families as well, which is why we're aiming at the 3 to 4 bedrooms, because then if they have more children, they don't suddenly have to leave their house, and you get the more long-term tenants that that stay, make the home in the house, and really look after it and provide that good sort of, on the other hand, the good investment for the clients that we're working for. We've got about nearly 400 clients, I think, on a done-for-you service. So we buy the properties, rent them out, and manage them for them. So clients from all different areas of life, mainly based in the UK, some living overseas, all different circumstances and all different reasons for investment. Having said that, I just thought I would then run through the sort of principle that we work on, how this can actually be a good way of using the money and making a property portfolio that ultimately will grow and earn you money from the savings that you've developed. So Mark, if we could have the first slide, please. If we work on a very simple round number of £100,000, if you have £100,000 to spend, you could buy one property. Now, clearly, I think you're based in London. We don't buy south of Northampton, and we buy up to the northeast of England, Newcastle, Sunderland, those areas. So 100,000 is probably the average price of the properties that we buy. If you have £100,000 and you buy one property without a mortgage, if the market goes up, so that the property is worth 110,000, you get £10,000 equity growth, but it's all in the property. So essentially, all in one place, and not working for you as hard as you could actually make it work. Mark, if you could have the next slide. If you split that 100,000 into 4 25,000s and put down a 25% deposit on £400,000 houses on a mortgage, a buy-to-let mortgage, if the market increases, and we tend to get our clients to finance on 2-year deals, so at the end of the 2 years, the market will have increased and they refinance at the best price that they can do. If they've then got 4 houses that have gone up to 110,000, and then they can refinance at 75%, which is the 82,500, which means that they can release tax-free 7,500 from each of those 4 properties. And if you can see that as a way that you can develop, we, as I say, ask our clients to refinance every 2 years, and every time they refinance, they are releasing tax-free equity from the properties. And once they've got money from the first 4, they can maybe buy a 5th, then buy a 6th, buy a 7th, and then every time you refinance and you're releasing money, you are pulling more money out tax-free, which you can reinvest to buy more properties, or ultimately, when you've got the right number of properties and you're pulling out the right amount of money every time you refinance, you've got your passive income, which is effectively working while you don't have to. If we could have the next slide, please. We buy properties at discount on the market value. We have different products. The most discount we would look for would be 20% really below market value. And there are different ways, which I won't go into in a lot of detail, that you can find below market value properties. But the example I just gave of buying properties with a mortgage and releasing the equity, if you get your properties below market value, so there's inherently equity in the property. So here, if you take your £100,000 property, buy at 80,000, so you've got £20,000 discount on the market value, and you're mortgaging it at 60,000. When you come to refinance, you don't just release the inherent equity, but you've got the market growth again. So you're maximizing the tax-free equity that you can release every time you refinance, and it moves your portfolio forward a lot faster because you're releasing more money. I hope that makes sense how I've explained it. But please ask questions afterwards if you want to. Could we have the next slide? This is just an example of how people start off with us. If you take a purchase price of 90,000 for a property and put down a 22,500 deposit, then the standard costs which you get with any property investment, stamp duty, refurb, because we always have to do some refurb just to bring it up to a good lettable standard to make it attractive to the tenants. Your solicitor fees, your mortgage broker, mortgage valuation, initial gas and utility charges which you would have while you're when you bought the property, sourcing fees which we charge to find the property. It makes your initial investment 36,270. So effectively, clients come to us with, I suppose, between 35 and 40,000 per property. Some will come with enough for one property, which they've with their hard-earned income. Some will use money they've inherited. Some will use work bonuses. All sorts of routes the money comes from. But you can start with us with enough money to buy 10 properties initially, or enough money to buy one property initially. And it gets your foot into the property market and starts that growth process of refinance, equity release, and buying more properties. If you could go to the next slide, please. When we look at the day-to-day running of the property, we look to make sure that the cash flow is effective so that you are covering your costs on the property. So if you have here, as an example, rent for £650, you're paying your mortgage for £300, we estimate £80 a month maintenance, which is a sort of lumpy budget that tends to come in not regularly, £80 a month, but could be a bigger bill once a year, something like that. Your insurance, which is about 20, the letting agency fees, you've got left £170 cash flow per month. Now, some people, most of our clients save that. It's there to cover any extra maintenance which is required, but it also, month by month, adds up to build more money for when you release the equity from your property, that you can use your saved monthly income to add to the amount that you've got to buy your next property. We do have one product which doesn't look so much at discount on market value, but it majors on cash flow. And for that, people are looking to specifically replace their income with cash flow from property. And they will then have a target of how many properties they need to get the monthly income to replace the income which they're bringing in through other means previously. And I think at that point, I'm going to pass over to Natalie.
So I just wanted to, are you finished with the slides?
Oh yes, okay.
Hi everybody. I just wanted to kind of carry on with a little bit about how the pandemic has affected property investment and the Insight Group specifically. So first of all, the property market. We are currently sat in a seller's market, so we are finding it quite difficult at the moment to find discounted properties for our clients. So we're working really closely with them and communicating with them to let them know when we expect the house prices to drop. We think it will coincide with the end of furlough, You know, the unfortunate incident of furlough ending, people not being in work and losing their jobs, will mean that the property market then is likely to crash, and that people will need to sell quicker, and therefore we may be able to get those discounts again in the volume that we're used to getting. But what that does mean is that we will be able to find more properties when the market crashes for our clients to be able to invest at a good price. But there's also other factors that have impacted the investment side, and no doubt will continue to do so for some months. Namely, you know, not only the demand, the being able to find discounted properties, but in a positive way, what the whole lockdown situation has done is increase our demand. So we've had more clients knocking on the door wanting to invest. You know, maybe they've been sat at home throughout lockdown wondering what to do with their money. So in that respect, it's been quite positive for us. The not so great impacts have been really on the letting side, where, you know, tenants have you know, struggled to pay their rent throughout this situation. Although, to be honest, the impact of that hasn't been as big as we anticipated. So we anticipated a spike in the number of tenants that were unable to pay their rent, but we managed that with communication on the lead up to lockdown to say, look, if you start to worry about paying your rent, get in touch with us. We're here to support you. We can help you, you know, to pay your rent. Remember to pay your rent first before anything else. The roof over your head is really important. But also coming at it from a supportive angle and saying, you know, don't bury your head in the sand. You need to let us know as soon as you think there's going to be a problem. And I think through that communication, we've really managed to keep that at bay. So it does mean that our investor clients are still getting their rent every month on the whole. The other restriction that lockdown has given us, that COVID-19 has given us, is the ban on evictions. So some of you may have seen in the news that landlords are unable to evict their tenants throughout the current crisis. I think that they were just about to lift that, and it might be in question again. You know, but again, we want to support our tenants, and we want to make sure that we see them through this and get them out the other side. But where that doesn't happen, our investor clients aren't getting their rent; it's coming out of their pocket. And it creates a problem then for their investment. So we do have two parties to look after there. So the ban on evictions have made it quite difficult for us to manage that on behalf of the landlords or clients, however we want to name them. But essentially, what the real struggle there with the eviction ban was for the tenants that weren't paying their rent before this crisis hit, that we were maybe already in the process of going down the eviction route, that had to stop. So that's where it really hit us hard, is where the tenants that weren't paying already were getting away with it, if you like. So that was really hard on the lettings business. The other impact really is the demand for rental properties has skyrocketed. We're not really quite sure why. We think it might be as a result of people sat at home for 3 to 4 months wondering what they're still doing sat in that house and wanting to move, which is good for us because it means that the vacant properties we have that we're trying to find tenants for, it's been much easier to do so because of the fact that we've had the demand. But on the other hand, it's also meant that more of our tenants are handing their notice in as well. So it's a little bit swings and roundabouts really in that respect, but it's meant that the volume of activity in our lettings business has actually really amplified where that's concerned. So more tenants handing their notice in wanting to move means more maintenance for us to carry out, and more tenant find activity for us to, you know, advertise properties and review application forms and things along those lines to be able to find the right tenants for the properties. But like I say, the demand is there from elsewhere as well, which is good. But I think that, you know, that we're having to do virtual viewings, so we're doing viewings through Zoom, sending our agent direct to properties and viewing the property via video, which has been more successful actually than we expected. We didn't really think that people would want to take up a property without seeing it in person, but apparently they do, which has been really great for us. So although it's more difficult to show a property and to actually sell the benefits of a property, and to show the size of a property really through a video is more difficult. People have been reacting to that really well. I think the biggest sticking point for us at the moment is still with our maintenance activity, for the reason of, we're still suffering from the initial lockdown period where contractors weren't working. So tenants were still coming across issues, in fact, more issues than usual because they were all at home. They were all flushing their toilets a lot more during the day. They were all using their appliances a lot more during the day. So the actual maintenance demand went up, but the contractors weren't working. So we were getting the requests in, and we could only deal as part of lockdown with the emergency requests. And then contractors started to work again, but there were still issues with supplying the materials for the contractors to be able to carry out their work. So for instance, windows, plaster, we've just been really struggling to get hold of those materials and to get contractors. And contractors are massively in high demand at the moment as well, which makes it even more difficult. So we've got a challenge on our hands really at the moment, trying to catch up on the maintenance work that's outstanding with our tenants, trying to reassure our tenants that we will get to them. But we can't deal with your broken door handle before we deal with their leak in the roof. So we've just got to make sure that we prioritise accordingly. But like I say, it has been a big challenge, and I don't see that fixing itself immediately. So we're going to have to deal with that for a few more months to come, I think. So yeah, that really is the kind of the main points around the pandemic and how it's impacted the investment side more because of lettings and having higher costs in there for our clients. Have I missed anything, Alison? Do you think?
No, I think that's it. I was just just thinking about the supplies of plaster that were coming in, and it was just running off the walls in places.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we had some real challenges there.
Yeah.
But actually, the Insight Group, we've actually recruited during this process, which has been a real blessing for us as a business and for the people that we've been able to bring in to the business. So, from that respect, where the pandemic hasn't hit us too hard, and thankfully we are able to give people opportunities to come and join us. So I think we'll open up to questions.
Thank you, ladies, for that insightful presentation. Yes, we do have quite a few questions, so I'm going to start in chronological order. Millie would like to know what differences are there using an interest-only equity release model versus a conventional mortgage when you come to sell. Does your approach change if property prices in the area go down?
We use interest only because it's the best, it's the most cost efficient way of it reduces your mortgage payments each month. If you're letting a property, you have to have a specifically buy-to-let mortgage, otherwise I don't suppose the mortgage company can check in between. I know a lot of the time people would switch from where they've got a residential mortgage and then they start renting the house out. I don't think mid-term they'd actually tell a mortgage company, but if we are going to buy properties for clients, we have to do buy-to-let mortgages. If the prices haven't increased in the time, and it does happen, you can do switches to a new mortgage arrangement. Essentially, if you go beyond the 2 years, you end up on standard variable rate when the mortgage rate can jump quite significantly. So we need to get the clients off that as quickly as possible, or not put them on it at all. There are costs involved every time you refinance, and if you're not going to release a lot of money, it sometimes doesn't make sense to do it. So you can do a straightforward switch with the mortgage company, getting you on a new deal on a new good rate for another 2 years, and you can wait with that property for the next time. We do buy clients' properties around the country. So last year we had a situation where a client had one property in Liverpool and one property, I think it was in the northeast. He pulled very small money out of the one in the northeast, but released 35,000 from the one in Liverpool. And when you've got your properties around the country in different places, you're sort of you're spreading the risk. So there's always a flow of property price increases across the country, generally starting from London, moving up. You can see how Birmingham's increasing, Manchester and Liverpool are booming. You can see it sort of moving up. I was doing this with my hand, moving up the country. And so there's always a little bit of a delay in some parts of the country. If you've got your properties in different areas, because we can manage across the country, because we've got agents on site, so we can manage anywhere in the country really, you are spreading the risk so that you don't have such a big issue if, when you're refinancing, generally one of the areas where you've got your properties will have increased, so there's always money to release.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answered your question, Millie. Didn't make it very clear for me, but I'm going to move to the next one. How do you deal with tenants asking for rental holidays, and what is the impact on your investors?
Really good question. So we haven't had, surprisingly, many tenants asking for rental holidays. The kind of upfront plan that we had for that would be to first of all try to help that tenant to realise that they could pay their rent. So again, around that supportive conversation to say, well, you know, what other could you look at your other outgoings, and you know, your rent is really important. Obviously, at the start of all of this, there was the mortgage payment holiday that the landlords could have taken advantage of if they needed to, but that's no longer an option. So rental payment holidays, we can work with a tenant to allow that, but they would always owe that rent back because that rent is due. So it just makes it more difficult for them to afford the rent later down the line. But we put payment plans in place for the ones that haven't been able to pay their rent for 1, 2, 3 months. And then they just kind of, even if it's £10 a month, we just add that to the rent until they've paid it off.
Okay, good that you haven't had many requests in those times. Do you prefer a turnkey property with less renovation costs when investing, or one needing a bit more work with potential to increase in value?
It really depends on the work that is required. So we could have 2 properties that are really similar, one requiring a lot more work than the other. But it depends on that work, what that work is, and therefore what the budget is for the refurbishment as to how the deal works. So we need to look across the picture to say, well, what discount are we getting? What do we estimate the refurbishment costing? And how does that pan out? So it's really not a preference of one or the other. It's just making sure that financially it works for the client and getting them the best deal.
So it depends on the client's preference and needs, basically.
Yeah, it depends on the financials of the deal. So we look at the discount on the property, the refurbishment estimation, and also the likely rental income from that property as well, to work out what their purchase costs would be, and then what their cash flow costs would be, and just picking the best deal financially for the clients.
Okay, thank you. Mark would like to know, how is the Inside Group regulated?
Well, we're not financial advisors, so we make that really clear to our clients, to our tenants, that we're not financial advisors, that we're not financially regulated. We're regulated through the Ombudsman, so we abide by the rules of the Ombudsman. And I think that's it, isn't it?
The rental side has the sort of legislation in place.
Yeah, we use something called ALA Property Mark, who provide us with. We also use landlord law as well to get our kind of advice on how to deal with certain circumstances and scenarios.
Do you still have a fiduciary duty to your clients, investors, or?
What? Sorry.
it might be specific to financial advisors, I'm not sure. Fiduciary duty?
Fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
No, I think as Natalie said, we're not financial advisors. We make clients clear that we are giving property investment advice. We don't provide loans. We don't provide, we have mortgage companies who we use who are regulated, financial investment advisors we can pass people on to who are accountants and people. So here we are using our investment experience to help the clients.
Okay, thank you. Next one is, could you please cover the tax implications of owning a buy-to-let property? Which was going to be also one of my questions. Thank you, Emily.
Oh, in what sense? Gosh, there's a lot. There's a lot we could go into there, but are you thinking about
The rental income.
the rental income?
So there's no
Yes,
tax.
I was referring to income tax, which is pretty unforgiving, especially given the fact that we can't actually use mortgage interest costs to offset the revenues from the rent, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. So there's no tax implication on equity release. That's tax free. But in terms of the rental income, I think it changed a few years ago where landlords were going to start getting taxed on that rental income. So yeah, it is a taxable income amount now.
We have a lot of clients at that time when it changed started buying limited companies. Essentially, if you are individually earning 50,000 or as a couple earning 100,000, it starts to become more super tax efficient to go into a limited company. But it also depends on a lot of other personal situations, which is why we have accountants who we would pass people on to if the question of a limited company started coming into the picture, so that they could fully discuss their own personal tax situations.
Can you please also elaborate how the tax-free release works?
When you have a mortgage on a property and you release equity, it's tax-free. So you can reinvest that into property, reinvest it to buy more property. I have to say, and as you can see, we're not tax experts. We take the claim to be.
We're definitely not. We go through extensive training on tax, and it's about 40 hours worth of training to understand the tax implications, which is why we're trying to kind of highlight the relevant points. But yeah, it's a bit of a minefield, that one.
Okay, thank you. Maybe in the future we can have somebody who is better suited to advise on tax, because I think we're all very interested in tax implications on every kind of investment. One that I missed from Georgie, sorry about that. When renting out a property, would you advise to rent it furnished or unfurnished? What are the pros and cons for each?
All our properties are rented unfurnished. And I don't know, that's never caused us any problems, I don't think, has it?
No, even to the point where, you know, sometimes we don't have built-in ovens and things like that. You know, it doesn't tend to stop our tenants from wanting to rent the property. They just buy their own freestanding one, and then they can take it with them when they leave, if they leave. But yeah, all unfurnished, and the main reason for that really is cost. You know, if we were to start thinking about furnished, it would be that the landlords would need to pay for that, and then it's the upkeep of those as well. So it's not just the cost of replacing furnishings, it's the cost of managing the activity around it as well, in the lettings business. So if something broke or needed replacing, it would have to be raised with the lettings department as a maintenance issue, and then it would increase our activity in there, but wouldn't earn us any money as a business. So hence why we always go with we always have unfurnished. And actually the properties that we let, sometimes we actually advertise them with the tenants' things in there as they're kind of in their notice period. And we find that the empty properties that we advertise get more interest, because I think people can visualise their own things in that space a lot easier than if they see that, you know, other people's sofa in the living room and things like that. So yeah, there's definitely more pros of unfurnished than there is cons.
Also,
if there are white goods in the kitchen when they're let, we tend to give them to the tenants as well, because the last thing we want is just before Christmas everybody's cooker breaking down and we have to sort it. It just causes a nightmare for the clients and the tenants actually. So it works much better. I think people prefer it generally.
but also I assume the type of market you specialize, 3-4 bedroom houses for families, and you're looking for long-term tenants. So probably people who go to rent long-term to raise a family will have their own furniture or will prefer their own furniture.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, some of them will quite happily ask if they can do work on the properties as well, sort of replace floors with what they want them to be replaced and decorate the walls. And once you know that a tenant wants to do that, you realise that they're willing to stay. And we ask them to provide pictures of the work that they do, and they just make them look like they're their homes, and that's what they do.
And that's what we want. We want long-term tenants for our clients, because the average cost of finding a new tenant is £1,500. So you know, it's the cost of actually the fee of finding a new tenant, but also any maintenance work that needs to be done when a tenant moves out to get it back to a lettable standard. So it can be quite pricey.
Makes sense. Next one, I'm going to combine Millie's next two questions. Are the mortgages and properties themselves held by the clients and managed by the Inside Group, or owned through the Inside Group? And then also Millie's asking, what's your advice when choosing a property investment manager?
The clients own the properties themselves, so the mortgages are in their names. So that's the answer for the first one. Sorry, what was the second bit of the question?
What is your advice when choosing a property investment manager?
From the point of view of a company that will help somebody build a property investment, sort of like us, or well, I think as I mentioned initially, there are various different types of property investment, and we specialise in the family lets. The company was started by Aran Curry, and he has built his own portfolio of over 200 properties along the model that we sell to clients. So we're experts in that field, and people who want to buy family homes come to us. There are similar experts in HMOs who know all about the market in that area, and you would go to them if you wanted to build a successful portfolio of HMOs. There's people, so there's a few companies like us, a small number of companies like us who deal in the family homes, buy-to-lets, and we're sort of pretty high up there in the field of family lets and property investment from that angle.
I think that's the first step, isn't it? Is understanding what route you want to go down. So, as Alison said, Aran Curry started the business, but he also runs Insight Education, which is an education business that is simply that. It's helping people to learn about property investment, and he doesn't just focus on family lets within that educational program. He talks about different types of property investments, so HMOs, serviced accommodation, holiday lets. So I think it's first of all figuring out what it is that you want to focus on, what you want. So you might want to learn a little bit more about what those mean individually and what suits you, and then look at, right, what investment manager can help me do that. And I would, I would look at online reviews and testimonials on websites and things like that to get a good understanding of the investment manager or the company that you're looking to use.
Thank you. And the last one is from Minal. What are your views on investing in commercial versus residential property?
Well, as Alison said, we do specialise in residential. My knowledge on commercial property letting is fairly limited. But for me, I think commercial, you've got a higher turnover potentially, particularly at the moment when you're looking at people working from home more often. Some companies are downsizing or not bothering with office spaces at all. So it depends what kind of commercial property it is as to the longevity of it as well. But further than that, I wouldn't be able to offer any more advice. I don't know if Alison will be able to add to that.
No, I mean, I know we've got clients who do work in commercial property and make money out of it. But it's another tranche of property investment, which you have to know the field you're working in, get the contacts and use the best advisors for that. The ones who deal in, and some of our clients do deal in different areas of property, they come to us because they think actually they'd like to get into family homes and we know about it. But if we wanted to get into, certainly if we wanted to get into commercial property, we'd go to a different property company to do that, to get their expertise.
Can you actually elaborate on that advice that I mentioned in the beginning that you might give for younger ladies who don't have a lot of initial investment to make, how they can participate into property?
Yeah, hi. The update was sent.
There are ways that people can get into property, and you get quite young people who have managed to create fortunes out of property by the lower level sort of property investment, such as you can do rent to rent. You could rent a property, get the agreement of the landlord that you are going to maybe turn it into a student let. You've got to get the right property, you've got to get the right landlord, and you've got to agree it. So you're renting the property, you then turn it into a 4-bed student let and let it out in that as such. And so long as you're paying the rent to the landlord and you've got that all legally agreed, you can start bringing money in on that basis. So you're essentially bringing more money in and paying out on the rent. There are options agreements that you can set up. As a big example, a big supermarket who want to create, they want to build on land, find the land that they want and might put money down on it on the planned expectation that they will be able to buy that ultimately. You can do it on a smaller level with properties. I'll have to explain this properly. You pay less for the property, you cover the mortgage and maintenance, and at the end of a given period you buy the property. There's all sorts of different arrangements for options there. They're out there, and there's some people who do just fundamentally work with options on different sorts of property investment. So there's rent to rent options. Is there anything else? I think those are the two ways I'd say. If somebody wanted to get into property and either they can't get, too young to get a mortgage, not enough income to get a mortgage, not enough money to come and to sort of start buying a property, you can work through the options process or the rent-to-rent process, start bringing income in. And particularly if you are doing it as a business, if you start bringing money in on a monthly basis, getting your accounts properly sorted, you can start to create your financial footprint as that type of financial investor, which eventually will enable you not just to have the money to have the mortgage, but it will enable you to have all the sort of right requirements to get the mortgage and move forward. We've had clients who, while they're waiting for properties, when they're sort of first investing with us, who've gone through options processes. And there's lots out there, looking online.
It's another really big education piece, isn't it? Similar to the tax. Once you delve into it, it's a lot more in detail than we could probably get across on this call. But you know, if you want to research the rent to rent or the lease options, then those are the two main ones that I'm aware of as well.
Alison and Natalie. So Maria, I've had a note to say that you've got some sound problems at your end.
So, no, it's okay.
It's okay.
Actually, yeah, I wanted to add that there are also funds like REITs that invest into property. So with very small investments through financial markets, you can still access the property market. But I think this is a whole other topic and a whole different session.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few ways that make it easy and don't require full ownership or taking a mortgage or having a credit score. I think that was quite informative. I also think we covered most of the questions. So thank you very much, ladies. It was quite helpful. That's it from me.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry. Listen, Natalie, thank you very much. Maria, brilliant job. You've got the job permanently. I think I can clearly just relax and get on with retirement, I think. So